Hello, I'm Samantha Hartley. Welcome to the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. Today I'm going to talk about a little known success secret, which is self-care. Revolutionary. Do you remember several years back when millennials were first of the age that they could start to make their own decisions in their lives? A lot of them decided instead of going to college or instead of going to work right away that they would travel. So we had all these millennials who were traveling the world and, backpacking or working, doing freelance work from Thailand. And at the time, I remember the boomers went crazy. Like, what do you mean? You're supposed to work until you're old and then you can be traveling. And that was the mindset that the millennials were reacting against was, I don't want to spend my whole life working and then end up old and traveling when I'm old. I want to travel when I'm young and can really enjoy myself. And at the time, my husband and I were, from our Gen X point of view, we were like, awesome, we love that idea. And in fact, both of us had done a lot of travel in those youth years between college and work. So the mindset that the millennials bring into our world with themselves is the opportunity to choose living for now instead of living for later, pursuing joy first and then working later. And I think that is a very important belief for us to look at as entrepreneurs. Because you probably know and can quote me 100 memes about how we're supposed to hustle and grind right now and enjoy our success later. And that most people won't put in the 60, 80, 100 hours a week that you're supposed to in order to, have the business that will fuel your life. And that's definitely the point of view in corporate for a lot of us who came from corporate or any young consultants who were with the big consultancies. That working 60, 80, 100 hours a week isn't anything unusual. So why would we bring that to our businesses? If you want to be profitable and joyful, then I don't think that's a way to work. The hustle and grind culture has always been interesting. I like hustle. I think hustle is, getting on the move and getting things done. But I'm not a fan of grind. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't believe it's sustainable. If you're going to work those kinds of hours in order to build something, there's a huge risk that before you achieve the thing you want to achieve, you burn out. You collapse, you get sick. Something happens that you're not going to make it to that finish line. The other thing that I think is really brilliant and interesting is that it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. In the middle of my entrepreneurial journey, during the times when I was earning the least amount and wanted to be earning much more, I would chronically overwork. So I completely identify with this point of view. We need to work. So I would work all the hours, constantly. And if my husband would say to me, hey, there's an interesting thing I'd like for us to go and do, I would say, it's not a good use of my time. I don't have time for that. I'm working. And it got so bad that I could never turn off my work, even though it didn't seem to occur to me that it wasn't ever making me more money. I just felt like, well, eventually it will, or something's gonna come through here. The funny thing is, it's earning more money doesn't have anything to do with how much you work. It's about how you work, what you work on, and what your focus is, and what your beliefs are. So this magnitude, this huge number of hours was not getting me where I wanted to be. But guess what? It was a habit. It was a habit that was so hard for me to break that I basically had to take the words of my coach. My coach suggested that I leave the office. This was my office in the home. Leave the office at a certain time each day. At the time, I think it was really hard for me to leave any time before 10 p.m. But he said, when you leave, I want you to close the computer and put a blanket over it like it's a parrot cage. So symbolizing the end of work. So hustle, grind, overwork are ineffective. They're bad for you, and they don't necessarily lead to more money or more success in your business. And I'm very glad I experienced that personally so that I can, when I work with my clients or when I'm speaking with you about this, I can say with convincing persuasion, I've never worked fewer hours in my life, and my business is much more successful than it's ever been. And I'm at choice with it. And I think, because I've noticed this with my clients over the years, that self-care is the key. We want to believe, in perhaps a hyper-masculinized culture, that what is going to happen, what's going to cause success, lead to success, is this push, 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 more, more, more. But what really is going to cause your success is going to be less, more mindful, more at peace. So that's what I want to talk to you about. How do we help you to create routines, rituals, and habits that make you your best self? When you're your best self, what are you? Creative, smart, energetic, ready. You have all your tools and faculties that you can bring to problem solving, growing your business, helping your clients, getting more clients. That's when you're your best self. So over the past year and a half, I started to see when my clients would get into an overwork habit, and then when we started to focus on self-care, how things would change in their business. It's not easy. A lot of us are addicted. Overwork can be an addiction. We can get that same hit of adrenaline from doing our work, and it can be very hard to leave it. And I think what helps is identifying what's going to be the best self-care for you. And to me, the path into that is to make sure that what you're doing is aligned with your values. So overwork, the way that I was doing it, was aligned with my values at the time, or at least the way I was living them. Years ago, I had done a Tony Robbins exercise where you list out your 10 values. And even though the bottom of my list has shifted around a little bit, I remember peace used to be like near the bottom. I was like, who needs to be peaceful? And now it's much closer to the top. My top 3 have never changed. So love, health, and security have always been my top 3 values. Love, because if you don't have love in your life, I mean, like, why be on earth? And by the way, I say that definitively because it's a definitive value for me. It doesn't mean you have to agree with that. It's just incredibly definitive for me. Health, because if I don't have my health, then what do I have? And then the third was security. So what was happening for me when I was stuck in overwork was that they were flipped upside down. And security was ruling my life, and I was living out of alignment with my values. And doing that is disturbing. It messes with you because your heart and mind know that you have other beliefs, but when you're acting differently, it shows you what you really do believe. So that's conflicting beliefs, and conflicting beliefs are a painful place to be. So what happened for me was that I began over the years slowly to shift from 3-2-1 to 1-2-3. I began to use self-care to help me demonstrate to myself and the universe that I was committed to living these values. And I tell you this because I want you to take a look at your values and notice where you're living and working in alignment with them and where you're causing yourself pain because you're out of alignment with them. A lot of us want to make a huge contribution in the world, make an impact, pursue our calling, create, all of those kinds of things. So those influence your values. Figure out what they are, and then let's take a look at ways that you can put those into practice in your business. So a resource that I recommend is Brené Brown. She has a values worksheet. It's kind of a checklist of them that you can go through and find yours. You can just Google Brené Brown Values PDF and find that. And I found that super informative. It's always fresh to kind of revisit and see, are my values still my values? And what are my values when I'm in my personal life? What are my values at work? Just fun to see where the overlap is and how those all align. So, just as an example for you, the way I'm living out those values, if love is the highest value, for me, that encapsulates spiritual practice, like my faith, my relationship with my husband, and then also the love of and friends in my life. It's kind of a big bucket that includes all of those things, and they might be broken out for you. You might have spirit or faith in its own bucket. But what I do with that one is make sure in that love is first in my life. And that means prioritizing all those activities that are related to it. I would also put in my love bucket my time with myself. That's how I experience God's love. It's how I'm often with a dog in nature during that time, alone. That's a very recharging thing for me. And it fills me up so that I can give more love. Health is an interesting one because I was so out of health, or I guess streaky, with committing to my own health over the years. When you have an opportunity to spend 7 hours a week working out or 7 hours a week revenue generating, sometimes we can get, our crazy thinking and choose the wrong one. And so for years, I chose not taking care of myself because I thought figuring out how to run the business was more important. Even though, again, I had committed to that as one of my values. So when I'm sane and clear-minded, it isn't more important for me to be earning money than it is for me to be taking care of my health. That's what I think is so important about self-care, is it keeps you in your right mind. And then security. Listen, work gets done. We all find a way to work. The client work gets finished. There's always hours and time for doing the work. What always concerns me is when my clients begin to prioritize the work over taking care of themselves. So I'm going to give you some examples of self-care practices. I think it's important for everyone to have a spiritual practice. It can be a non-denominational one, like meditation, but a spiritual practice, to me, the way I define that is connecting to universal love, God, the whole oneness, feeling yourself being a part of something larger than you. I think it's very grounding, and also it helps you to stay in touch with what you're here to do and whether you're in the right place at the right time. So that spiritual practice, I find for many of my clients, is pivotal, and it's easy for them to do it occasionally, but the real key is to make sure that that's part of your life every single day. Rest. Arianna Huffington, thank goodness, made sleeping a priority after years of us hearing about all these entrepreneurs who only sleep 4 hours a night, which is not healthy for most of us. So rest is a primary kind of self-care that I think is important for us to do, and it doesn't just mean sleep. So sleep is very incredibly important and needs to be a priority. And also rest, which is to me taking care of yourself, rejuvenating yourself outside of work, but not sleep. So that can be things like taking a walk, just sitting around, piddling around in the garden, daydreaming, doing activities which are restful, but don't necessarily mean sleep. And if you're so tired that the only rest that you need right now is 20 naps a week, then that's also fine. But there will come a time when you're up on sleep, but you still need that kind of mental rest. And the third thing I think it's that you should always include in your self-care routines is creativity. Some kind of a creative activity outside of work, because so much of our creativity is funneled into work. So can you, outside of work, write, paint, create, cook, garden, do creative things, ideate with friends, do creative things that stimulate that part of you, rejuvenate, refresh. And creation, a lot of times what happens is inspiration, which means we bring things through from spirit into our work. And so can you create those things? And by doing so, fuel that part of you which is taxed in your work. So those are three general areas that I think it's really important to include. Another example is my client Cheryl, who had an incredibly successful business over the few years that she's worked with me. It has grown like crazy, and the opportunity is for that business to suck her into it and take all of her time. So she made a little acronym for herself. So MMM is her self-care practice, and that stands for meditation, movement, and make time. And make time meant she had a tendency to overschedule herself, and then there wasn't time in her schedule for her to do the work for the clients or work on her own business. It was all meetings and things like that. And so making time meant there was time in her schedule for her to work on her own business and also to come up with new ideas and things like that for the business. So I think she's a great example of like, here's what I need to have in my life. And these are the habits, rituals, and routines that I'm going to put in place so that I can take care of myself. And just for some thought starters for you, a few more ideas for self-care. And I do want you to choose a few of these. I definitely do the values exercise and then choose a few of these to see what makes you feel like a better version of yourself. So housekeeper. If I find out people are cleaning their own house still, I feel like unless you adore that activity, you have to get other people to clean your house, because that is time that you could spend in spiritual practice, resting or creating. You could spend that on your love time with your friends or your partner or your family. So a housekeeper is one of the big ones. A lot of people love their fancy coffee. I'm no longer a coffee drinker, but that's if that's you, then it's your healthy splurge. It's your thing that you do for you. Don't let anybody take that away from you if that makes you happy. Those little pleasures make a big difference. Chocolate every day. I have plenty of people I know who, as long as there's chocolate every single day, then their life is good. Again, I'm not a chocolate person. People time. Love my people time. And I think ensuring that your business does not consume so much of your life that you don't have people time. I think that's really important. Flowers. I'm a fresh flowers person. Love to have that around me. I do feel like it makes me my best self when there's beauty around me. Hugs. If you're a physical touch, if that's your love language, then make sure you get hugs every single day or as often as you need to get them. Travel. Maybe not right now. It's a little bit difficult, but if travel is something that's key in your life, then how can you weave more of that into your life? Don't wait until later. Do that right now. And if you put that on your calendar first, before you schedule anything else out, then you make sure that it will happen. Classes. Constantly learning. I love classes, and I love to take classes on crazy things. We've just done one from the great courses on the history of South America. I didn't know anything about that. It was super fascinating, and it makes me excited. It gives me ideas. Being in nature. Hiring coaches. There's so many coaches that you can have. A relationship coach, parenting, life coach, health coach. Investing in you being a better you. There's nothing more important than that. Tub time. I know there are those who need to be in the water. There's the tub time people and the beach people. Make your life one that supports those self-care things. I think the most important thing I want you to take away from today is when you are not at your best, everyone loses. And when you are at your best, we all win. So taking care of you is not a selfish act. It's actually something you do for the good of all. Taking care of you serves the highest good of all concerned. So if you need permission, if you need ideas, if you need affirmation, take care of yourself. Support yourself to be your best self. And when you do, I think you will see that your work and your life are both more profitable and joyful. So with that, I'm Samantha Hartley, and I'm wishing you a profitable and joyful consultancy. Thanks for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to get video updates. Thanks.